The United States needs to take action and reform drug laws that are currently in place. On the national level, there has not been any significant change to these laws for decades, and we the people are suffering, and the nation as a whole is suffering because of it. The war on drugs was first established by Richard Nixon in the 1970s and was his response to youth rebellion, social upheaval, and political dissent, which drugs were a key symbol of. He dramatically increased funding and presence of United States federal drug agencies such as the DEA. Following Nixon's initial war on drugs, it caught a second wind with the Reagan administration. Nancy Reagan was a key figure in the Just Say No campaign, which taught children about the dangers of drug use and drug users alike. However, this fueled media outlets to create a sense of paranoia and fear amongst the general population of the United States, and accompanied by the increase in federal spending towards the drug enforcement agencies, incarceration rates skyrocketed. This sharp increase in arrests is alarming to say the least, and much of this is due to the current narcotic schedule. There are multiple oversights in this schedule, however, none are more glaring than that of marijuana being listed in the highest section, despite numerous appeals to relocate or even remove it entirely. For a drug to be listed as a Schedule 1 narcotic, it must have 1. A high potential for abuse, 2. Not be accepted to have any legitimate medical use, and 3. A lack of safety if not used with a medical professional. This chart comes from drugwarfacts.org, and its purpose is to help highlight how this current narcotic schedule overstates the dangers of marijuana. As you can see, marijuana scored lower in nearly every category in comparison to alcohol or nicotine, which are both legal to use in the United States. And based on this graph, we can determine that marijuana does not fit the profile of a Schedule 1 narcotic. For starters, its dependence and withdrawal scores are the lowest of all drugs on the list, meaning that it is not highly addictive. Second, marijuana does have a legitimate medical benefit, and even the state of California has recognized this despite having some of the strictest health laws in the country. And lastly, if Colorado and Washington have taught us anything, it is safe to use marijuana without the supervision of a medical professional. Current drug legislation is accountable for the majority of prison overcrowding in this country. A recent study found that in 2015, there were more arrests for marijuana alone than all other violent crimes combined. This includes murder, manslaughter, and aggravated assault, just to name a few. Prison overcrowding is a common topic debated in political spheres and should not be taken lightly. This issue leads to unexpected expenses for taxpayers due to the cost of legal fees, booking charges, and let's not forget, holding expenses for the inmates. Going to prison is not only a strain on our economic resources, but can also have a lasting and damaging effect on people's lives. Felons have an incredibly difficult time trying to find jobs after being released, and studies have showed that callback rates for ex-cons seeking jobs sharply decreases. Reducing the impact of drug legislation could drastically improve our prison system, as well as help countless individuals in their quest to find suitable employment in order to support their families. We've looked at how the United States approaches the issue of narcotics, but how do other first world countries tackle the subject? Europe is home to many progressive countries, and the difference in narcotics legislation is startling in comparison to the US's. One of the ways in which these different approaches can be viewed is from the general stance of health issues versus criminal issues. As previously discussed, the war on drugs sought to punish drug users as criminals, whereas in numerous European countries, drug users are often put in rehabilitation centers. This approach of focusing on drug use as a health issue makes attempts to correct the problem at the source instead of just getting users off the street and hoping that the problem fixes itself. Such progressive countries include the likes of Germany, Switzerland, and the Netherlands. In all three countries, drug clinics can be found that allow drug users to come and consume a drug of their choice once a week. This ensures that drug users are not harming themselves through the use of unsanitary needles or overconsumption. At the centers, they also offer counseling to the patients and emphasize prevention, therapy, and harm reduction. Having drug clinics is all good and well, but does this approach reduce crime? Based on various studies, this map shows that drug-related arrests for the majority of Europe are well below that of the United States per capita. Much of this can be attributed to the health approach to drug use as opposed to the criminal approach. These maps tell a very impressive, yet at the same time horrifying stories. There were more drug-related deaths in the United States than any other country. We need to reform drug legislation and switch the mindsets of Americans to not view the users as criminals, but as people in need of help.
I feel that our drug legislation should be a lot looser. Because our laws aren't helping much. There's a bunch of people still being arrested, and arresting them doesn't do anything. It doesn't change them, and they're not being fixed at all. There's just more and more people being filled in prisons, and we're not giving them any help that they need. We can loosen up the laws a bit, make it less punishable, and focus more on helping the people rather than punishing them. Because if you take a look at other countries like Portugal or Sweden, they focus more of their money and time on helping the people, giving them what they need to help stop using drugs and stuff, rather than punishing them and just filling up their prisons. I think how we're doing it here is completely wrong, and we should change exactly how we're doing it rather than focusing most of our money stuff on imprisoning people. It's just a waste of time, waste of money. No one's being helped, so we should change that.
The war on drugs costs the U.S. billions of dollars a year. Some estimates say the U.S. has spent over $1 trillion since the beginning of the war on drugs. Drug arrests have contributed to our growing incarceration rates. If we legalized and taxed illegal drugs at the same level as alcohol and tobacco, we could potentially make $46.7 billion a year in tax revenue. The war on drugs results in the rise of enforcement costs. The war on drugs created the largest prison population on Earth. Overall, the war on drugs causes more harm than good, has led to a more increasingly crowded prisons, and led to a loss of potential economic gain. It is a repeat of prohibition.